Hello, everybody. Did that work? Oh, yes, it is. Sorry, I'm used to seeing a little wee thing flickering along the bottom of my screen, and it wasn't. But my audio bar is showing that it's working. So it's just like, don't rely on the wrong thing. The graphic thing in the overlay does not. Sorry. Yeah, so much yelling. Me doing caps lock. All right. Was something I was figuring out I was going to say. I'll just see if I can figure out why it is that little wee display bar is not showing. I've probably turned it off accidentally. Yeah, that'd be about right. Um, I have no idea why. Anyway, I will actually just do a quick scroll here and see if I can figure out what it is that's wrong with it, because I know it's meant to be there. Waveform visualizer was turned off. Why was that turned off? Sorry about that, Gariki. I'm not sure why I enabled it. I thought I was disabling it, but obviously not. Thanks. Hi, Jonathan. Great to have you here too. And I'm trying to think. Yeah, my brain is really not doing well today at all. Oh, and look, you can see the top of my microphone because it's up a little higher than it should be. I've been playing around with its suspension system. Hair ties, yes, but they're under here instead of under here. So I need to move them. Yes, you can still hear me. And these ones here, I need to move the legs out a bit. But hopefully it means that my microphone is not picking up all the thumping when I'm hitting my keys instead of just the key clicking, which is what it was doing. So I'm just going to lower this. I don't think it'll bother you too much. We'll see. Hopefully the hair ties will stay on the pins that they're meant to stay on. Hair ties and skewers, but the extra thick skewers, so that there's not, yeah, that one you would have heard because the legs hit the bottom of the stand. Right, that's working. Kind of. Straighten up the microphone so it's not hitting the bumps at the back. Right, yeah, yeah, weird mic because it's a blue snowball which my son got me, and it actually has a reasonably good pickup. I was surprised at how good it is. It's got various filters and stuff on it, but it's actually got some, so it picks up people working in the kitchen and stuff really, really well. It's just that I've added this extra homemade shock mount to it because when I type on my keyboard, it comes through with everything you guys are hearing, and really loud, especially that thunk, thunk, thunk of the coming as an impact sound coming up through my desk, because my microphone sits on the same little shelf as my keyboard because I've got nowhere else I can put it that I can actually still type. Anyway, I was going to check something. Sorry. I will just get that done and then it's out of the way. Yeah, I thought so. I'm just going to ban someone. Right, and back to our regular programming. I should probably say hi to everybody, including my command that comes in here, which basically tells you who I am and what I do. And I will give you another one, which is, and another one. Yeah, I know these should all be on timers. Go, Ricky. You can tell me all about how to do that in the chat later on. Not here chat, but on Discord chat. There was one other. I think that's it. Yes, they all worked. Good. And I know they worked because otherwise they would not have popped up as they have just done, which is good to know. It was nice to actually figure out that that was what the situation was one time when I wasn't sure if I had been, oops, I just turned up the volume on my phone. Thought I was turning it down. That's what happens when you're trying to do too many things at once. When I was doing something. Yeah, I was trying to do a shout out to somebody, which I'll get onto in a minute. I was trying to do a shout out for somebody, and I've always wondered what happens if you type in the information incorrectly. in a chat command, and it showed me that it will not give you an incorrect link unless the actual username that you're typing in for a shout out is someone else's username. If it is, then it's still going to come up with whatever your command is for your shout out. But if you type it in incorrectly and there is no existing username with whatever you typed in, it will actually say what you typed just then for your shout out, but nothing else will happen. It will not actually call the shout out. So that's really good to know. I'm really pleased about that. Anyway, right, we're going to get on with this. And yes, I will give you some shout outs, having spoken of them. And this is a bunch of people, you mainly all know each other, but there'll be people here who are looking at this afterwards, and they will be watching the VOD, and so therefore they will see the chat, and so they will actually see the shout outs, and they'll be able to click on the links in it, because Twitch is nice like that. Although if you arrive late, you can't see anything that happened before you got here in the chat, but if you look at it as a VOD, you can. Yeah, Goreki's a pretty cool dude. I hear he's getting all high-tech and putting in a second monitor soon. So Goreki's one of our Codex monitors. Yes, I say too much, don't I? So there you go. I've given you the Codex links. I've got the link for the Discord server and also for our Twitch team. And Codex is a bunch of people who read public domain books on Twitch. Some of us also put the videos over on YouTube. I'm not sure if anyone actually reads live on YouTube at this stage or not, but that's us. We do all sorts of book reading on Twitch. I'm the only one, as far as I know, who specializes in children's books. The others will also read children's books or portions of children's books, but that's not the entirety of what they do. But also, Codex readers generally will also do things like gaming and just chatting and all that sort of stuff. Whereas me, my chatting supposedly is incidental. It's just what happens when I forget that I'm meant to be reading and I'm actually just getting caught up in the information I've given you. Goriki has just made a comment, my poor TV. Yes, he has been using as a second monitor a TV that sits up above where his desk and his computer is, and it died. No, it did not leap out and land on him as far as I know, but it died, and it's been going for a very long time. It's almost an antique for the era of TV that it is. We were having a bit of a chat about it before, and he will be missing it dearly, because once you've got used to having two monitors instead of a single one, it is really, really hard to be limited to just one single screen and not be able to do something here and also have something else that you're referencing over on the other screen. I know I was very lost when I was without a second monitor for a while there, but I've got that one all sorted out. Anyway, so the other shout out, and another shout out I was going to give you, was Jonathan. See if I've spelt it correctly. Yes, I did. Yay. That's wonderful. So Jonathan reads old documents and plays games. So the old documents he reads are often transcripts. No. What do you call it when someone has typed up something that was originally handwritten? I suppose it is a form of transcribing. Anyway, so he reads copies of old letters, court documents, and various other things that have been written, specifically at the moment, as far as I know, he's still doing it, set in the Tudor period. So they are real, actual documents that were written at the time during the reign of Elizabeth I and, I don't know, probably Henry VIII and a few of those other ones as well. Henry VIII, I think, was the first of the Tudors. I'm not good on that sort of side of history. I have a very, very loose understanding of it. And so he's got in mind to do a game setup that references a lot of this information. And so he's wanting to build up his repertoire of actual information that is accurate from the time period. Whereas a lot of the stuff that you play these days that is set in old time periods, they make a lot of it up. Very much so. And so if you are very familiar with a particular time period historically, and you're playing a game, instead of being fully immersed in the game, because of the descriptions and the visuals that they give you and the events that happen. If you know that time period and they put in something that is very anachronistic, so anachronistic means out of its time place. So loosely. So if I was telling you all about the settlement of the area that I live in and my great, however many greats, grandparents coming in and living on the beach in a little wee hut that they had built out of material that was made from the bush up behind the beach that they were on, and getting oysters off the rocks and catching fish and things like that, and living off this sort of thing, digging up pippies and cockles and things like that to eat. If I was telling you all about that in a game context, and then in amongst that they've got the son of the family is up there in the bush clearing away the land, and he pulls out his chainsaw, fuels it up, pulls the cord a few times, and it goes, and he's cutting down the scrub, you would be totally disconnected from the flow of the story I was telling you, because they didn't have chainsaws back then, and you had been so saturated in the story setting of the time that they were settling it, when they didn't have engine powered ships, that everything was done by sail or muscle power. If I started talking about a chainsaw that he was using, you would get disconnected from the flow of the story. So one of the things that Jonathan is wanting to do is actually have the saturation of the story be real, so it really pulls you into the time period that story is about. Anyway, so that's kind of part of it. There's a whole lot more stuff that goes on with it, and I'm not asking him to give me all the details of it or anything like that, because sometimes it's quite good to have just sort of have a little thing that you're working on, that you're building up, that you're involved with, you're planning, that you just hold on to and you look after, and you spend time with the people who are going to help you to build that, but you don't go telling everybody about it until you're ready to, the actual detail of it. I don't need you to know all the detail of everything else that I'm planning at the moment or investigating at the moment, whether it's for books or for streamers or anything like that. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink, go Reiki. With no innuendo there whatsoever. That was just a reference to the fact that people, sort of have secrets about things that they're working on, there's nothing wrong with that. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else I was needed to say about any of that sort of thing. I'm sure there was. Have you noticed any other changes? No, there. I've got a tip jar. Well, actually, it's a hype cup, technically, which means that it's not just for tips. It's also for follows. It's also for subs. It's also for anything else like that happens. I can't remember what they all are. But I think I've got it working. I'm not sure. My brain is a little bit loopy at the moment. I'm trying to think why. Have I had too much coffee? I don't think I have. And somebody needs to type in my Discord server, which I will give you a link for. Yes, such a wall of text. I'm putting all the comments in the text, and nobody else is saying anything except for poor Goriki and his TV. Discord. Right, so those of you who haven't been here before, those of you who haven't joined us, I have a Discord server, and I used to joke about it being probably the quietest Discord server in the world. It's not, but it's fairly quiet. I'm sure there are others who have actually forgotten about theirs, who've got even less going on. But the reason I'm mentioning my no, that's not a problem, Jonathan. I'm glad you have a courier coming and that you're able to go and collect whatever it is that you need from the courier. The reason I mentioned the Discord server is because hopefully one of you regulars here will write into the chat over there a reminder for me to do an emote or an alert or something, a command or a something to do with the 1, 2, 3 tips, just because it seems to be one of those things that I do every time. I think I remember it every time anyway. And the reason I remembered that was a cup of coffee, wasn't it? So, yeah, I'm looking over at my other monitor, seeing if there's anything else that I was trying to remember from over on there. Yeah, and the hair's all fluffy today. I tried to get it a little bit tamer than what it had been, but if you see me scratching, it's because I don't have a rash or anything like that, but my skin is quite sensitive. Things will irritate it, not to cause a rash or anything like that, but just my nerves seem to be turned up at turned up to 11, where everybody else is down around 5 or 3 or something like that. It's just one of those things. I notice a lot of that sort of stuff. That's the way life is. You just put up with it. But it does mean that there's a lot of other things that I notice that other people don't notice, because hand in hand with my nerves in my skin being turned up, I will actually see things that other people don't notice. And like they used to say that women could see a lot more colours than men could. Well, actually, you can train your visual acuity for things like that. But my mum is quite creative. And I remember being somewhere and talking about the sunset that we were looking at. She and I were standing together looking at the sunset. And yeah, sorry, the skin nerves thing is why you'll see me rubbing my face and my skin. It's just one of the quirks. But we were looking at the sunset, and like I say, she's a very creative person. She's really good at seeing colours and light and all this sort of stuff. And I was pointing out how I really liked the way the clouds were doing this and that, and then this colour up in that area there. And I described the colour, and she said, "I didn't see that before. Do you see that normally?" And I said, "Yeah, that's why I described it for you." And she says, "Okay, well, now that you've described it, I can see it. But if you'd just said, oh, look at such and such, I wouldn't have seen it." And it's just one of those things. So I don't know. It does mean that sometimes you get a little bit overwhelmed, because there's all this stuff that can be a little bit much that you're trying to take in and deal with. And that's all part of the ADHD in association with ASD. That's me, neurodiverse all the way. But it's great because I enjoy a lot of the stuff that I notice that most other people don't notice. It's kind of like having an inside joke, a private joke, a family joke, except that it's a family of one enjoying the joke. G'day, Q. Great to have you here, Coleslaw. I was trying to think. It was probably something else I was going to say, and I can't remember what it was. I should probably just introduce myself in case there's somebody new here, because I'm pretty sure I saw a name of somebody here that I hadn't seen before earlier on in the user list. Not seeing them now, but that's okay. Maybe I scared them off. That's okay too. So what I was going to say was, hi, I'm Jev. I read old children's books. Yes, old children's books. I'm just pulling them out from behind my magic curtain. These sort of old children's books, ones that are made 100 or more years ago often, but not every book that I read is one that I have a physical copy of. A lot of them at the moment are actually ones that are on my antique iPad mini. I say an antique because it's the first generation. It's still going, actually. It works really well for reading ebooks on. And I can go to Project Gutenberg. There you go. We have a link that I need to give you. Project Gutenberg, which will work if I actually have my cursor in the right place. If you go to Project Gutenberg, you can download public domain books and read them. There are a lot of all sorts of books. There is fiction, there's non-fiction, there's various historic records too, I think, as long as they're public domain. Ones that they thought were interesting enough for people to put them online. And that's where I usually get my children's books in digital format, just because they're available and they are free. You are not borrowing them from a library. The copy that you have on your device does not need to be returned. It won't disappear when you've finished using it after a month or 2 weeks or whatever the limit is for your local library for digital items. And so it remains on your device. There you go. It's quite cool. It doesn't mean that every book that is in the public domain is on Project Gutenberg. The site is basically started off as public domain books that were from the American publishing market, effectively, and has expanded into other books as well. So there's been 1 or 2 books that I've been trying to find by New Zealand authors or English authors, and some of them are there and other ones aren't. We've actually got an author, we had an author in New Zealand of children's books who was quite revolutionary in her educational thinking, realizing that children learn things better if they actually can feel a sense of connection to it. So she would tell fairy stories that had a scientific basis for what was happening in the story, not the fairies, but the things that were happening, such as the way flowers are fertilized, and so therefore the fertilized flower then produces the fruit of that tree and things like that. But she would use a fairy story to tell the explanation, and she wrote quite a few books. Well, I have managed to find 2 of her many books online available as ebooks, because our population in New Zealand is relatively small. We don't have a lot of money going into digitizing children's books. Our stuff that is going into being digitized, that is New Zealand record type books, where we want to keep a digital record available, they're starting with the adult books, obviously, just because that's where the market is, that's where the interest is. Later on, eventually, we'll get around to it, but they don't see it as being a high priority. Hopefully, the originals, or printed versions, sorry, just moving my footrest because it was doing weird things, the printed versions will still be available for long enough for somebody to scan them and then digitize them. Yeah, eventually that'll happen. So yeah, I read books largely from Project Gutenberg if they are ones that I am using an ebook copy of, and my lovely friend, my antique iPad mini, still reads them for me. Visibly I can see them. That's what I mean. Words, having a hard time, words today. And that should be another one of my commands, shouldn't it? An amusing one. So that's who I am. I read old books because they're the books I grew up reading, and they expanded my perception of the world. And I realized that my understanding of the world was a lot broader than others in my own age, mainly because of the fact that we lived close to or with various elderly relatives, and so I was used to hearing their stories. But on top of that, I was reading things that they had grown up reading. The same physical books, like the ones I just showed you, were books that they had read themselves. And so I had an understanding, a resource of knowledge. Even though it's fiction, it's been written by someone who is a real person. And so the way they view the world comes through in what they write. And so I realized sometime when I was at school that I had an understanding of the world that a lot of the others my age didn't. And it wasn't something to be taken for granted taken for granted. No for of anything else like that. You don't need those. Yeah, words are hard. So there we've got that part of it, and the rest of the introduction is the 3 tips, isn't it? Yay! First tip, drinks. Second tip, snacks. Third tip, comfort. So make sure you have water. Water is the primary that you need to keep your brain and your body functioning in terms of something to drink. But you are yes, I know my desk is noisy, but you are most welcome to have other drinks that you like handy. So I have a double shot flat white. Now, flat white is a coffee, an espresso based coffee that is I suppose you could say native to New Zealand and Australia, and it's another one of those things that we have big arguments about who invented it, the Kiwis or the Aussies. I don't know, and I don't really care. I just really like it. So it's a little bit like a cappuccino, but without the extra frothy froth on top, and without a topping of either powdered chocolate or cinnamon. And did you know that a true cappuccino, if it's done by a barista for themselves to drink, will not usually have chocolate on, it will have cinnamon. Yes, bet you didn't know that. So I'll just have a slurp of my coffee. So that's my drink of choice today. Sometimes in the middle of summer, it'll be one of my homemade cocktails. I have sorry, itchy, that's the nerves turned up to 11 thing. I have a beautiful gin that has been made on one of the islands out from where we live, sort of like 30 or 40 miles away, whatever that is in kilometres, because I can't translate that because it's a nautical term that I'm using here, nautical miles. and they make an organic gin, and it's very, very nice. It was gifted to me by one of my children, and I'm just about due to get some more actually. So it's a combination between this drink. Yes, I know this is a PG or a G channel, but hey, this is for the grannies in case they want something nice. If you want a refreshing alcoholic beverage, it's a combination kind of between a G&T and a martini. So you have gin, you have vermouth, whichever variety of vermouth you like. You can have red, you can have white, doesn't really matter. It's up to you because it's your taste. You have some tonic, some, not lots of tonic. And then you top it up with, so you have your various drinks in the bottom of your cup. You're making it into a taller cup. Your various drinks in the bottom of your glass, and then you top it. Yes, you can have ice in there, and then you top it up to make it the Kiwi version that I do. You top it up with L&P, lemon and pyro, which is a fizzy drink that we make here in New Zealand. It was originally a particular pyro water, is a mineral water that was discovered down just south of Auckland a little bit, and then it became the basis of this fizzy drink, soda, soft drink, whatever you want to call it, pop, any of those terms, that became it's just culturally part of one of the things that New Zealand makes. And in fact, back in the days when we had secondary school students who would board with us and then go to the local secondary school from overseas, we had Japanese students and we had German students, and they would spend a couple of terms, half a year with us, going to the local school, and a lot of it was so that they could get settled back into being at school on a regular basis for some of them, but in a different context to what they were used to back home, so that they would actually view themselves and the world a little bit more independently, be a lot more aware of the consequences of their choices, but also a lot more broadly aware of the world outside of their own school setting back home. Because if you've always gone to the same two schools, primary school, secondary school, had the same people around you all the time, you get very, very blinkered in terms of this is the way the world exists and what you can expect of it. And so it was all part of their opportunities that these children were having. And there was a number of them who initially, when they had L&P, were like, oh, okay, yeah, whatever. It's a little bit like Sprite or 7-Up or lemonade or whatever you want to call it. But it's a bit different. No biggie. But by the time they went home, that was the soft drink that they were buying all the time down the road. It just was. I don't know why. But it's a very nice drink in summer, when you've got everything nice and cold, like your fizzy drink, and you can put ice in it too. And because you're actually topping it up with a lot of the soft drink, it's not as hard a drink. It's not as alcoholic as it would be if you were making a big one with all of that quantity taken up with your alcohol. Anyway, so drinks. That's point one. Snacks, point two. Today we have, have you got your snacks ready? If you haven't, you're going to need them for when we're reading, because otherwise you won't be able to sit and read, just sit and listen to the story without interruption. Your tummy will be rumbling, and it's like, oh, I've got to go and get something to eat, but I don't want to because I'm listening to the story, but I need to get something to eat, and then you get this extra tension going on. So today's snack is licorice, black night licorice. Very sweets, lollies. So it's just these little pieces you get in various shapes, these sort of things. So I'll just pull some out, and then I don't have to rattle a bag at you all the time when I'm reading. So there you go. Got a handful of licorice. Put that down on the desk. And then I can put this back in the treat jar. Yeah, that's another thing. I'm still working on an idea for if you're overseas, especially if you're in the States, but I think also in Europe, there's a service where, as a streamer, you can register with a particular company, and people in your community can pay for treats for you. So for general like meal type treats, but also sweets and stuff like that. We don't have that facility in New Zealand because we live away from main countries like America. that where a lot of those services are available. Yes, we do have food deliveries, but if you live out of the main centre of the city, they're not that easy to get and they're very expensive. So nobody's going to send you a bag of lollies and have it cost 10 times the price just because of the freight to do it. Anyway, so I've got this here and it's got a QR code which you won't be able to read here on this because it won't clarify for you, I don't think. But it's actually a treat jar for pet food. I use that to stick my sweets in so the ants don't get to it. But I've started up discussion with a local, it's kind of like a New Zealand-based company that does a broad range of things the way Amazon does a broad range of things, except it's all stuff that they stock and their suppliers, not a whole bunch of independent sellers who use them as a storefront. And they do household goods, they do computing equipment, and they also do foods and things like that. And so I'm continuing to plan my next stage of discussion with them for doing something like a wish list for New Zealanders. So we have Throne that is available for lots of places around the world now. If you are a streamer and if you live in one of the main countries that Throne functions in, you can register with them and assemble a wish list of things that you want, and then your community can choose to buy something for you from that wish list. And Throne will be the facilitator of that order going through, and then the item being shipped to you, the streamer, and the people who are sending it to you, the person who has gifted it, does not get to see your real name. They only see your screen name, and they also don't get to see your address. So your privacy is maintained, but also the person who is receiving it, the streamer, doesn't actually get to see the gifter's real name, because a lot of us actually like to keep our real world separate from our computer world. Some of us, we've had some rather harsh reasons why we've needed to do that, but that's okay. But also it means that the streamer is not having to deal with someone's credit card company or anything else like that. And so Throne facilitates all that. So that's great if you're in the States. That's great if you're in parts of Europe, because they have authorized companies that they deal with that you can make your wish list from. But if you're in New Zealand, they actually also now function with a payout scheme. So I can use Throne. I can choose things that I want to receive as gifts. And then if someone wants to gift that to me, they go to my Throne wish list, which is actually, there's a link for it just turn my hand the right way, just down there on outside of my video window, you can see it. It says see my wish list at Throne Me and jevvv, which actually there's a command for that if anyone wants to see it. I'll see if that works. Yes, it worked. So it's in the chat now too. So what happens in places like New Zealand is, because we don't have in-country a lot of those retailers that Throne is dealing with that are on their preferred companies to deal with for gifts, but also the general ones that are available. What we have in New Zealand is we can choose the things that we would like to receive as gifts, and then Throne will actually receive the payment for us and tell us screen name wise who gifted it, but also that will then be made available to us as a payout that we can then directly put towards the purchase of what that thing was on our wish list, and then we can share it with everybody when we receive it, and it's like all the big excitement. So it's nice that they've found a way to make it kind of available for us in New Zealand. One of oh, did I not get it right for the Throne link? Anyway, so thanks for updating it, Goriki. I'm not quite sure what I had wrong on it, but there it is. So one of the things I'm looking at is, because we have this company that functions in some ways a little bit like, oh, okay, yes, the URL. I forgot about the fact, when you've done lots and lots of typing, you automatically put a dot at the end of things. No, some things, and now sometimes when I'm not doing computer stuff, when I'm typing for other purposes, I end up writing lots and lots of sentences which don't have full stops at the end. Yes, Go Reki is amazing. Give yourself a pat on the back, Go Reki. That should be another command we've got, shouldn't it? Pat on the back. Anyway, so one of the things I'm looking at doing is seeing if I can help them to see the value to streamers of keeping your real life anonymity and privacy, because there are people who are stalkers and they're not great, and you don't want to facilitate them finding out where you live if it's inappropriate. And also other people, you know, they feel a bit weird about being able to see where it is that you lived because they bought something for you. So I've started discussion with this company, this local company. It is a New Zealand company, about the value to New Zealand gamers and streamers of being able to have stuff gifted to them through a wish list system, which keeps them safe and private. But it can also be shared, and it would be something that would work really well for New Zealand streamers, because this company does food products, this company does like sweets, lollies, drink stuff, you know, like fizzy drinks and things like that. But they also do hardware, they also do cute lights and all this sort of stuff. So I'm just trying to think of where I put it. There was something I got this I got recently through them, and it is a book light. So it's not a super fancy thing here, but that is a light, and it opens up like a book. Isn't that cool? But I got it from that company. I'll just turn this light off so you can actually see the light in it better. See, that's actually a light. And so it can be used as a room light. Well, not a room light, but, you know, just like a mood light. And it was one of the things that I got through these guys, because when you create a normal wish list with them, they will notify you if there is a price drop. That's cool too as well. So what I've said to them is, the whole wish list idea is great. Can we now upgrade that so that there is an optional wish list system, which means that I can share my wish list with somebody else. They will only see my screen name, not my registered username for the service, because you know, when you order something, you usually use your real name. But also whoever is ordering from that wish list isn't going to see my personal details, and I'm not going to see their credit card details when they purchase something for me. And it's just a whole new idea for them. They do thankfully have a bunch of people who work in gaming and are actually involved with gaming themselves. So I'm hoping that they will click onto this idea. And then hopefully Goreki and I Goreki's come up with this really, 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 really cool idea. And I'm finding out some information from my end about how this can possibly be a thing. And if it is at some stage, we'll let you know. Don't worry about it. You'll know all about it. Yeah, we do totally need that, Jonathan. It would be really cool. But anyone else who's overseas who does want to gift me anything, that's fine. Just use my Throne link. There's not much on there at the moment. One of the things I do want to do one day is actually be able to have a post office box so I can receive books or various other things like that, because that's the other way to maintain a little bit more anonymity, is to actually have a post office box. But at the moment I don't have the funds for it, because I don't actually get paid for doing what I do. And I've never ever had a payout through Twitch or anything like that, because I don't do something that is super popular to actually have people putting lots of money into it. But anyway, that's all that. And we've only had 2 tips. Are you keeping track? We will eventually get there. So drinks, snacks, and the trigger for that discussion about wish lists and things like that was because of discussing snacks. And then the third one is comfort. So make sure you've got yourself somewhere comfortable to sit if you are not having to work or study. So this is my reminder for somewhere comfortable to sit. It's just a particular cushion that I like the colours and the pattern on. Yeah, so there you go. I will keep you updated if I make any progress with these guys for this wish list idea. It would be really, really cool. I'm trying to come up with an idea for what it would be called too. Something like Streamer Stash. I don't want to call it Gamer something, because that kind of excludes people like me who aren't gamers. It's really more for streamers. I've mentioned it to a couple of other people in New Zealand who are also streamers, and they have said that it is a really, really, really cool idea. Oh, I just saw a thing over there. I'm not quite sure what that was. It was to do with Throne. I'm just going to have Please excuse me. I just want to see what it was showing me because I don't usually get prompts over there. Anyway, so I will let you know how that goes if we get anywhere with that. And like I say, I've actually spoken with a couple of other New Zealand streamers. And it's just one of those things that one day we'll eventually get there. We will eventually get there. We'll get some stuff happening. But yeah, I am collecting people's responses to this idea for a New Zealand-based wish list system like Throne is meant to be. I like the fact that they have actually made it kind of available to us instead of just saying, no, you can't have that, which is what they used to do. But it would be nice to go a little bit further than that. So yeah, we'll get there. We will get there. Oh my goodness. Go Riki. Wow. Thank you. My goodness. Sorry. If you want to find out what that was about, I suppose I better find out for you. We'll get there. We will get there. Thank you so much. I do appreciate that. Right, I need to shut that and get on with reading because otherwise I'm never going to get anywhere. Oh, thank you so much. I might be able to do some subs for people eventually. If this carries on, that's quite moving. I need to make a bigger command for that thing too, though. That really should be a lot bigger than that so it can be seen. Right, what are we up to? We are reading a book called A Terrible Tomboy by Angela Brazzle. How's that for a name? Brazzle. Brazzle is how she always said it was pronounced. I like that. I've got to read that out. Actually, no, I don't need to read that out. I've got an app for that. I'll just see if I can get it to show. There you go. Oh, I've got it in the wrong place, haven't I? I need to find the right thing for that and move it. No, not that one. Not that one. I'll be there in a minute. I've nearly got it. That one. Chat highlight. Which is... Oh, it's right down in the bottom place. That's why. So basically, Goriki, I've just got two things overlapping each other and they shouldn't be. So I'm just going to read it to you. Goriki says, if a reading stream isn't like 50% meandering, you're doing it wrong. Exactly. I will actually get my overlay sorted out so that those things are not overlapping each other in the wrong way. They are actually in the right way. Let's have a look at moving this one up here. And then the little thing that sits there all the time is not going to be in the wrong place. There you go. Thank you. I agree wholeheartedly. Right, let's get on with this. So Brazzle, apparently some ancestor of hers, grandmother, great-grandmother, great-great-great, something around the grandmother, their father was in shipping in Rio de Janeiro, I think. And for some reason, the name Brazil or Brazzle has been associated with the family. And so this is the name that she used as her author name, was written as Brazil, but pronounced Brazzle. Yes. Yes. Like Brazzle, not the country. Exactly. I don't know why. Maybe they just got tired of hearing, oh, are you from Brazil? Or something like that. But they decided that they weren't going to live with that. That's a good idea, Jonathan. Jonathan says, I have a redeem for tangents, yet we have them without redeems too. I totally do tangents without necessarily doing a redeem. That would be a cool idea. I'm going to have to get information from you about how to do that, just like I'm going to have to get information from Goriki about how to do... Oh, coleslaw, yes, I did. That was Goriki, thank you. I'm glad to know that the Twitter thing went through on that too. That is so cool. We're so much closer to getting I think it was towards the PO box. I'm not sure. Anyway, but yeah, no, Jonathan and Goriki, both of you, one of you, Jonathan, you need to tell me about redeems for how you use redeems for tangents, and Goriki, I need you to tell me about how you do your timer things for stuff that comes up in chat, because I really want to actually get a few things going as standard instead of me having to type them all in, because they should just automatically come through a certain amount of time. But also the ideas of what people use for those things. You know, what other alerts that they have that pop up, or what other things that come through automatically on chat. I like seeing how other people use these things. I think it's a really cool idea. Anyway, and yes, Go Ricky, you are amazing. So is Jonathan, and so is Coleslaw too, by the way. And I am going to just turn on our jigsaw puzzle, because we've got this far without a jigsaw puzzle, and I think it's time that we had one. I am going to leave that at 100 pieces because it's our first one for the day. And I am going to get you a link for it. I'm working on that right at the moment. And then I will put that particular panel out of my way. And I shall add that to my, yes, you didn't see that, pretend you didn't see it. I shall add that to my commands over here with the updated version. I know GoRicky does it all with keyboard shortcuts, but I don't trust my memory for doing that. So therefore I just paste it in and update the command. And the command is go for puzzles. So if you have been watching all of this chatter over on YouTube, because yes, I do not edit it out, the jigsaw puzzle I'm talking about is over here outside of my video window. If you're on YouTube, you are seeing this video window here. But there is so much more. You can't see how much more is showing on my overlay over in on Twitch. So if you want to actually be able to do the jigsaw puzzles while I'm reading, if you want to be able to get involved with the chat that's been going on, some of which I've been reading out loud and things like that, then please come on over and join us when I'm reading live over on Twitch. And actually I have a link for that. Here's a link for Twitch right here. So those of you, yeah, I had the first time I did this, I went and put a dot over here between the jevvv and the NZ. That's one of those automatic, you put dots in places you shouldn't do. So that was that. So this is my Twitch channel if you're over on YouTube and you want to come over and explore. And I have another one. And this is for people who are watching this over on Twitch. There's my link for YouTube. And if you want to check out the playlists of the various books I've read previously, that's where you go. It's cool. Oh, and that's worth knowing too, Goriki. I am glad you said that. I shall also put that up for those who want to see that information. I'll turn off. No, I went and turned off the jigsaw puzzle. The wrong thing. There you go. Now the jigsaw puzzle's back on. And I'm going to read this out. And if FYI for people wanting puzzles, you can alter the background colour and the matte colour on your own, and it won't affect anyone else. It's really handy if you have vision difficulties. Absolutely. The main reason why I stick it to that dark grey is just so it sort of fits in a little bit more with everything else that's visually on my stream. But it doesn't, you can do it, you can actually adjust it so it works for you, the colour for the background. So there you go. That's worth knowing. I had actually wondered about that. But there we go. Let's get on with reading. Right. So we're reading A Terrible Tomboy by Angela Brazel. Yes, that's the way they say it. If you're watching on Twitch, then that is probably one of the early versions of the cover up there above the jigsaw puzzle. Not necessarily the first edition, but one of the early ones. The default setting for pieces is right side up, so you don't need to worry about rotating pieces to fit. Yes, I don't bother changing that to be ones where you have to rotate them, because I don't want to make it so it's too hard for people for playing if you're not really used to doing puzzles, but you want to do something while you're listening to the story. So let's get on with the story, shall we? Enough of this chats. Malarkey. I have to unlock my book again. Look what you made me do. Okay, A Terrible Tomboy. Oh my goodness, sorry. I need to see that. I need to actually, no, I don't mean I need to, do not do that for me, please. I don't mean I need to see that way. I'm meaning I need to show you what Goriki just said. He says, I have seen rotation on and it's medication inducing. Yeah, it would be, especially if it's a lot of puzzle pieces. That would be just too much for me, for my brain. If you like a challenge, do that when you're playing puzzles there yourself. The actual website that they come from is one where you can put in your own pictures, or find ones online that are publicly available pictures, not copyright ones from stock websites where you have to pay a fee for using them. But some of the free stock websites, you can actually use their ones, which I've done a couple of times. And then you can play your own puzzles in your own time too. There you go. So, A Terrible Tomboy by Angela Brazel. We'll try again. Angela Brazel, not Angela Brazil. We are reading chapter 11, A New Friend. Here we go. One hot afternoon when the holiday... No, we missed the little bit of poetry. We need to read that. A new friend. Good morrow to the day so fair. Good morrow, sir, to you. There you go. One hot afternoon when the holidays were about 3 weeks old, found Peggy wandering disconsolately round the farmyard alone. Lillian was away. That's the oldest sister. Lillian was away, spending a few days in Shrewsbury with a distant cousin. And no, I'm not going to get into the Shrewsbury-Shrewsbury argument. I'm just reading it this way. In fact, there you go. Take that. One hot afternoon when the holidays were about 3 weeks old, found Peggy wandering disconsolately around the farmyard alone. Lillian was away, spending a few days in Shrewsbury with a distant cousin. Father had gone to Warford and had taken Bobby with him, so Warford is their nearby town. Had taken Bobby with him. Even Rollo, that's their puppy dog, had disappeared on some mysterious errand, not entirely disconnected with Bones. So the young lady was left for once to her own devices. Aunt Helen had broadly hinted that an hour's practice of much neglected pieces upon the piano in the Rose Parlour would be a profitable means of employing the time, and the fear lest this threat should become an actual command caused Peggy to shun the neighbourhood of the house with elaborate care and betake herself, with a selection of pets, to the barn. But the rabbits were stupid and sleepy this afternoon. Even Jack the magpie seemed to feel the heat, and refused to amuse his young mistress, while Prickles, that's the hedgehog, snored on in his box of hay, oblivious to all coaxings and blandishments. Bother the creatures, said Peggy at last, giving it up in despair. If they want to go to sleep, I suppose they must. Oh, now I've got hiccups. Sorry. I suppose they must. I wonder if it would be worthwhile going down to the harvest field. I'm afraid David wouldn't let me drive the reaper. No, I know what I'll do. Driving the reaper, oh my goodness, that would be a little bit weird. Having this, I don't know how old she is, 9 something, driving the reaper. It will be a horse-drawn one, but I would imagine, but it would still be, you would not want her out there cutting the crops. She might really not. You're meant to drive in a straight line through the field of the crop, so you keep getting these. You don't lose anything. You actually have it done effectively. I can imagine the breakages that would happen to. Oh dear, that doesn't bear thinking about. Then so she said, "No, I know what I'll do." And she jumped up, full of a new idea which had suddenly flashed into her mind. Down the pasture she pelted, running flat out, her red hat looking like a new species of poppy among the grass, and taking a flying leap over the fence, made her way along the dusty road to a place where a large willow overhung the path. The tree was old, so old and decayed that the upper side of the trunk was worn away altogether, leaving nothing but a hollow, crumbling shell. Yes, I've seen trees like that. As rotten and dry as matchwood. Into this cavity Miss Peggy proceeded to creep, where, concealed by the new branches which had grown from the old stump, she found she could lie at full length, quite hidden from sight, while through a hole in the bark on the other side she could obtain an excellent view of everyone who passed in the road below. The first to come by was Mr. Griffiths, the stout old miller, mounted on his equally fat old horse, the two jogging comfortably along, almost asleep in the sunshine. Peggy allowed him to get well beneath her, and then taking a pebble from her pocket, she let it fall plump in the middle of his white hat. The miller sat up with a jump and reined in the old horse, staring into the tree with such blank amazement on his rubicund countenance. Oh, we have a word. We've got an app for that one too. I do hope that word is in the dictionary. There it is. Rubicund, ruddy, possessing a red complexion. And I've just had news today that there is another update to my little app there, my widget. The person who's been writing it up for me has been refining it a little, so we'll see how we go. It's available for me and mods to use. I'm sorry, it's not for general public. At this stage in my streams, it is possible for it to be turned on for everybody, but that's a little bit open to abuse, so we're not doing that at this point. Anyway, but I'm also testing it out for them because they're going to make it available as a widget for Stream Elements for anyone else eventually. Right. The miller sat up with a jump and reined in the old horse, staring into the tree with such blank amazement on his rubicund countenance that Peggy had to stuff her fingers into her mouth to stifle her mirth. I can imagine. "Shoo! Hi!" cried Mr. Griffith, clapping his hands, thinking that there was something dropping stones on him, possibly something like a magpie. "You'd love that for your stamp crabs and fop doodles." I'm guessing those are words that you have a tendency to need to look up. You can actually adjust which dictionary it looks up to, by the way, but I haven't done that. I like it using the free dictionary. So we'll carry on. But that's another note to leave me over in the Discord server. You can give me more about it. Right. But like Bre'r Rabbit, Peggy lay low and said nothing, and the old man rode slowly on, turning round in his saddle for a last lingering look as he went. Encouraged by this success, Peggy's next venture was on a peddler who came down the road with a pack on his back and a thick stick in his hand. Oh dear. I'm afraid this time her stone was bigger, for it bounced with such effect on his shoulder that he turned round with a flow of language far from elegant, shaking his fist at the tree with so much fury that Peggy was in terror lest he should climb up to find the author of the assault. But he evidently thought the day was too hot for such exercises, and with a final abusive epithet walked away muttering curses on all the children in creation. So he obviously figured out it was a child doing it. That's another word that we don't use these days, is an epithet. Go on, let's put that one in there. Oops, need to put the command. Epithet, a term used to characterize a person or a thing. So it's basically people use the word epithet to mean a rough word to describe a person. So when you use a swear word or a curse word or something like that about a person, that's using an epithet. There you go. It's not safe to use stones, thought Peggy. They know someone must be up here to drop them. I'll try little pieces of wood instead, and then they'll think it's a bird or a squirrel. After that, she had excellent sport, for the women were beginning to return from Warford Market with their empty baskets, and she was able to cause wonder and mystification in many a rustic breast without the slightest chance of discovery. I like that, Gariki. That's wonderful. I need to save that phrase. Gariki says, epithet is the Egyptian god of dissing people. Excellent. There you go. The Egyptian god of dissing people. I like that. That's wonderful. I'm sorry. I'm having a wonderful day today. I hope you are too. I'm actually making a note of that. I have a browser gadget that allows me to, in my browser, select text and then save it as a note file within the browser. And it's very usable and I love it. It's a great way when you're browsing and you just want little snippets of information to save them. So it's like having Google Keep, but instead of having to open up Keep to do it, it just saves it as a little wee note in a sidebar, which is out of sight most of the time, but you can call it up when you want. Anyway, so she was growing almost tired of the fun when she heard a cheery whistle, and a boy of about 14 came sauntering slowly down the road. He was rather a nice-looking boy with merry brown eyes, a freckled nose, and frizzy chestnut hair, which means it's sort of red-brown, by the way, which stood up like a mop all over his head, and he had a particularly jolly, breezy air about him. Peggy had acquired such practice at her interesting occupation by this time that she was able to drop her piece of wood neatly down the back of his neck at exactly the moment he passed below. "Hello!" cried the boy, turning round and flinging a stone into the tree. "A squirrel, I'll be bound. I guess it's no use you hiding way up there, old fellow. I'll unearth you before you're much older." And he commenced such an onslaught of stones that, to avoid the descending shower, Peggy tried to creep deeper into the hollow cavity where she was lying. But the poor, rotten old tree could stand the strain no longer. And with an awful crash, down came the overhanging bough, bringing Peggy to the ground with a good deal more speed than elegance. "I say, what the dickens? Great Scott!" Suitably posh, I suppose. "Are you hurt?" exclaimed the boy, regarding with much astonishment the crumpled heap of sailor frock, brown curls, and splinters of willow wood that had suddenly descended at his feet. Peggy got up, feeling tenderly at her shins, which had suffered most in the fall. "I don't think I'm quite killed," she replied slowly, "but I've no doubt that there'll be heaps of bruises tomorrow." Scott Dickens. That's a great idea. Gariki says, next RPG character named Scott Dickens. Very good. "So you were the squirrel. It was rather a cute dodge, and well done." So he's all up on the local on the current slang at the time. "I guess you're something of a tomboy, young lady, aren't you?" said the boy, grinning appreciatively. "No, I'm not," said Peggy indignantly at the old reproach. "I'm only fond of a little fun. I know who you are. You're the boy who's staying with Miss Forster at the Willows. I saw you in church on Sunday." And she nodded convincingly. "Why, I believe I saw you too. You dropped your collection money and made a rabbit out of your pocket handkerchief." He chuckled at the remembrance. "Aren't you Miss Forster's nephew?" said Peggy. "What's your name? Why have you never been to Gorswin before?" Gorswin is the farm that she lives on. "Where is your home?" asked Peggy, wondering at his slight American accent. Probably explains the tendency to use slang. The English didn't tend to quite as much until after the Second World War, when they were exposed to a lot more of it rather than just in the movies. The boy whistled. "Phew, what a catechism! My name's Archie, if you want to know. My godfathers and godmother gave it to me at my baptism. Yes, Miss Forster is my aunt, and I haven't been to Gorswin before because I was raised in Colorado, and that's a little too far for chance visits. But I'm going to locate here now most of the time, I guess. Is there anything else you would like to ask?" And no, I'm not going to attempt to do a slightly American accent because that would be terribly butchered. No, just no, sorry. And the brown eyes looked at her quizzically. Was there anything else she would like to ask? "Yes, I should," admitted Peggy frankly. "I want to know what you're doing in the corner of Miss Forster's garden. I can hear you sawing and hammering there every morning." "I wonder you didn't come to see me," he said. "Well, I would if anyone invited me." The boy laughed. "All right," he said good-naturedly. "Come along now and I'll show you if you like. If we cut over the hedge here, we can drop straight down into the garden without going round by the road. I guess a girl can climb a tree to play squirrel. A girl who can climb a tree to play squirrel won't shy at a fence. Eh, Miss Tomboy?" Peggy replied by lightly vaulting over the obstacle and following her new friend with much promptitude, giving him a considerable history of herself and her family as she ran to keep up with his long strides. "Here we are," cried the boy, jumping over the little stream that bounded the Willow's garden and watching Hup, hup, try again. Get the words unstuck. Here we are, cried the boy, jumping over the little stream that bounded the Willow's garden and watching Peggy's heroic leap after with an eye of secret approval. There now, if you want to see what I've been doing, you can. He put his hands in his pockets and whistled carelessly, but it was evident, all the same, that he was pleased to show off his handiwork, even to a little girl. Peggy gave a gasp of astonishment and delight, for by the side of the stream was fixed the prettiest little miniature water-wheel, which was turning round as merrily as the miller's own. "Oh, how lovely!" she cried. "You don't mean to say you made it yourself?" For the efforts of Joe and Bobby at carpentry were generally of a very rough description. "Of course I did. Do you reckon I'd get the village joiner to fix it? Precious much good he'd do at a job like this, the clumsy old idiot. But the wheel's nothing. Come over here and you'll see what it turns." "A grindstone! How splendid! Why, it's going round ever so fast when you put that on when you put on that catch. Hang on. Yeah. So putting on the catch is basically when you take the shaft of the water wheel goes through to a cog and then it connects to another thing, which then it uses to make the power from the water wheel go through to whatever it is at the other end, in this case a grindstone. It's not permanently fixed, so it's always going around. You can disconnect them so you don't wear things out. Like with millstones, you don't want to burn them. So there you go. Right. Sounds wonderful, actually. A grindstone, how splendid. Why, it's going round ever so fast when you put on that catch. I can grind your penknife for you if you like, suggested Archie magnanimously. I'd admire to do it. That's a weird phrasing. The water wheel bone is connected to the millstone. Yeah, absolutely. The head bone's connected to the neck bone. Yeah, well, the water wheel bone's connected to the millstone bone. Exactly. I'd admire to do it. Haven't got one, said Peggy sadly. I lost mine out of my pocket the other day when I fell into the stream. Ah, girls have such stupid pockets. They never can keep anything in them, said the chap. She's lucky she has pockets most of the time these days. Women don't have pockets at all. Girls don't either. They can never keep anything in them. Never mind, perhaps this will be more in your line. And lifting up a lid, he showed a tiny churn calculated to fill the feminine soul with rapture. I don't know why a feminine soul, but there you go. A butter churn, I would guess. You could put some cream in that and make enough butter for your tea, he said, when Peggy had exhausted her list of admiring adjectives. I'll let you do it sometime if you want, but if you like the churn, what do you think of this now? And, stooping forward, he moved a switch, and the strains of a little musical box were heard playing The Last Rose of Summer with wonderfully correct time and tune. Last Rose of Summer, that's interesting. I might need to write this one down. That's the bonus tip I didn't give you. I gave you the 3 main tips, if you're new here: drinks, snacks, and comfort. I have a bonus tip. Yeah, the bonus tip is pen and paper, or pencil and paper, or whatever it is you want to write with, because often you'll come across a word that you want to check out a bit more of, or something you want to look up. Like I'm writing down now, The Last Rose of Summer. Last Rose of Summer. And the reason I'm writing that down is because it is probably a real song that was around at the time, and I want to see what it was like. Just because, why not? I mean, we've got the internet, why not use it for something? Right, carrying on. The Last Rose of Summer with wonderfully correct time and tune. You'll never persuade me you made that too, cried Peggy, turning upon him with wide open eyes. Indeed I did, laughed Archie. Oh, it's not so difficult after all. See, I'll show it to you. It's only made with pins, set round in a circle on a piece of board, with a nail on a pivot in the centre to revolve round and strike them. The hard part of it was to set the pins just right. You see, the shortness or longness of them makes the difference in the notes, and the distance between gives the time. There you go, like a little modern music box where you've got little metal fingers that there's a drum that goes round with bumps on it, and it goes ding, ding, ding. and it plays a tune because of the timing on that. Anyway, so that's what he's talking about, having made himself. It took me a jolly long while to puzzle it all out, I can tell you. I think you're a genius, declared Peggy, who was absolutely steeped in admiration. Why, no, said the boy, but I reckon to go in for engineering sometime. So it's all practice, you see. When I can get some more tools and things, I want to set up a hydraulic pump to water the garden. I believe I could put electric light all over the house if Aunt would only let me try. Because mill wheels, or water wheels, sorry, not mill wheels, water wheels can be used to generate electricity. I'm afraid you might blow us all up, my dear boy, exclaimed the pleasant voice of Miss Forster, who had joined them unobserved. So you have been making Peggy's acquaintance. She had better stay to tea now she is here. I will send a message up to the Abbey to say we are keeping her. So Gorswen is the Abbey. It's the ruins, but rebuilt as a house, basically. Part of it has stayed intact. As the farm, the centre of the farm, which their father owns. It's been family land, and so that's Gorswen. It's also the Abbey. Peggy beamed with delight, for she wanted to see more of Archie's wonderful work, and also the cakes and jam at the Willows had a reputation for excellence quite unsurpassed in the neighbourhood. I can imagine. Miss Forster was a little elderly lady with a neat bird-like appearance and a brisk, cheerful manner, who seemed to match the prim square house with its green door and brass knocker and white sunblinds over the windows. Everything about the place was kept... Sorry, I didn't explain that, did I? I will be reading a sentence to you out loud. I will have my eyes on the word in the sentence and I will still get lost on the page. That's my ADHD. But it's lots of fun because sometimes we spend a few minutes trying to find where we got up to. And I think it's hilarious. Anyway, finding it now. I'll just read the sentence again. Miss Forster was a little elderly lady with a neat, bird-like appearance and a brisk, cheerful manner who seemed to match the prim, square house with its green door and brass knocker and white sunblinds over the windows. Everything about the place was kept in the most exquisite order, never a weed on the paths, nor a daisy on the lawns, back in the days when daisies were considered to be weeds and lawns not wanted, while indoors the old-fashioned rooms were the very perfection of neatness, and the polish on the Chippendale furniture was a thing to wonder at. And yes, this is Chippendale, the furniture. No, go and clean out your brain, please. Thank you very much. This is a granny-safe story place. When Miss Forster had adopted her brother's youngest boy from Colorado, her neighbours held up their hands in amazement and suggested that one of her London nieces would have proved a far more satisfactory companion. But Miss Forster herself thought otherwise. My nieces are dear girls, she said, but they take all I say for gospel and have not an original idea among them. I want some fresh young life in the place to keep me from quite stagnating. Archie brings a breath of the new world with him, and outside interests which I hope may prevent me from falling into the narrow rut that is so often the fate of elderly spinsters in retired villages. It is quite possible that he may upset the house in some slight degree, but on the whole it is good for me to have my little ways interfered with. We don't get set in our ways so much then. One is apt to get into the habit of thinking that the set of a curtain or a speck of dust on the mirror are of more importance than the affairs of the universe. That's a good... I think she's going to stay young in her mind for a lot longer than many other people who don't want that interfered with. And I've got no idea why my phone is not showing the chat. Anyway, doesn't matter. It's showing everywhere else. Since his arrival, Archie had certainly done his best to preserve his aunt from any danger of stagnation, for his fertile brain kept her in a perpetual tremor as to what the dear boy would do next. We work everything by machinery out in America, you know, Aunt, he explained, and it feels just terribly behind the times to come home and find you jogging on in the same humdrum way this old country has done since the conquest. I guess if you could come out to Colorado, you'd get an eye-opener. Miss Forster opened her eyes wide enough, as it was, to see a neat telephone made of 2 empty cocoa tins and a piece of waxed string fixed up between the house and the stables, while a small windmill on the scullery roof turned the coffee grinder in the kitchen, to the huge amazement and delight of the cook. Yes, he's a very busy boy for the age. She had gasped a little at the incubator made of an old biscuit tin and placed on the greenhouse pipes. The incubator is possibly to help the chickens' eggs hatch. That's usually what incubators are for. I'm not sure. The greenhouse has pipes because they heat their greenhouses so that plants grow in there when otherwise it would be too cold to have them growing in the garden. Having lived in an old historic house that had the ruins of a greenhouse, the glass was still there, the pipes were still there, but they weren't hooked up to a working boiler anymore. And having gone and explored what the different components were, it was quite intriguing, because I come from a very young country, so we don't have a lot of things like that are still extant. Would not a good sitting hen be really better, my dear boy? She suggested mildly. I don't see what you are going to do with the young chicks when you hatch them out. So yes, it was for hatching chicks. Oh, I'll have fixed up a foster mother before the 3 weeks are up, said Archie. I'm lining a shallow box with plaster of Paris and sticking it full of feathers while it's wet. Then, if I keep it on the hot pipes, it will feel for all the world like an old hen, and I don't believe there'll be a chick that'll find out the difference. There seemed to be no end to Master Archie's wonderful inventions. The boy had a great talent for mechanics, and was very painstaking in carrying out all the minute details of his work. Most of his schemes were really of use in the household, though occasionally some of them were not attended with quite the success they deserved. He had hung the great dinner bell in the cherry tree, and fastened a string from it to his bedpost, so that he might scare the birds from the fruit in the early morning. But unfortunately he had flung out his arms in his sleep and set the bell ringing soon after midnight, bringing the neighbours hurrying up to the willows, thinking it was an alarm for a fire. He had manufactured a marvellous hat grip, warranted to defy the windiest of weather, and presented it to the housemaid. But when the poor girl tried to take off her Sunday hat, she found it so tightly fixed to her hair that it took the combined efforts of the other servants, aided by the liberal use of a pair of scissors, to remove the construction from her head. One would hope that it wasn't her hair or her hat that the scissors were applied to, but the connection between the contraption and the hat. I'm just going to send somebody a message, because this is reminding me of a particular book that somebody has in their room. So just a moment, bear with me. Joel has a particular book in his room which I remember from when I was growing up, and it is a book that was, I think, an uncle's or something like that. Great uncle, when I say uncle. We had a lot of family around, not a lot of people in each generation, so it's not a huge family, but they were nearby. And so therefore I was quite used to referencing someone as an aunt or an uncle when they were a great aunt or a great uncle, or someone as a cousin when they were a third or a fourth cousin, maybe even a third cousin once removed, that sort of thing. Thank you. So this book here reminds me of the sort of things this young chap is making. This book is called Every Boy's Book of Hobbies by Cecil H. Bullivant. There you go. It's probably from the same era as this book was written. Author of Home Fun, etc., etc. And most of the print has worn off it because it's been used a lot. It's got very thick pages. The cover on the spine has fallen off. Yes, that's who it is. To dear old Max, with love and best wishes for many happy returns of the day from Mother and Father. 19th of August, 1916. There you go. Now, that was my grandmother's brother, one of her brothers. And for some reason, the book was with her when I was growing up. Maybe he didn't want it anymore because he'd outgrown it. And it's got written in the front, inside the front opposite the half title, McClement Library. That's the family name. It's another one of these ones that has this style of illustration where it's done as effectively it's an etching that they do on a pen plate. That's his ghostwriting pen. Cecil H. Bullivant, the kid in the author's ghostwriting pen name. Very good. I like that idea. So I will just give you an illustration as to, not an illustration, some information as to why I think of this book when I'm reading these inventions this guy is making. So contents, part 1, the workshop at home. Carpentry and joinery, the boy's own den. How to make a school box with secret compartments. How to make a puzzle box. How to make a wily wizard's table. A novel photo frame. A homemade boomerang. How to make a flagstaff. How to make a submarine boat. Model aircraft. A wooden steam engine. Yes, it has inverted commas around it. How to make and work a scenic railway. A miniature mill. Let's have a look at it. Page 134. 134. Let's see. Framework of the mill. Let's see if it's going to give me, it's a windmill, this one. I wonder if it's actually going to give me an illustration of, oh, there you go, this is what it looks like when it's finished. It's a line out, like a construction drawing where it's all the lines. So there's the windmill blades. That bit there is made out of a piece of metal that's cut. And then it's got a string or an elastic that comes down here to a pulley which turns this round here. So it's not as extensive as what this young chap has been making, but it's intriguing anyway. So it's got things about collecting coins, stamps, autographs, birds, eggs, which the children talked about in one of the books. Outdoor hobbies such as scouting, simple surveying, walking, astronomy. Out and about with a geological hammer, camping, caravanning. That would be like a horse-drawn caravan probably. The keeping of pets. And in keeping of pets we have beekeeping. I wouldn't have thought of those as pets, but there you go. Wood carving, bamboo carpentry, poker work, bookbinding, how to make a simple stencil, photography, how to patent an invention, how to make a hectograph. You can look that one up for me and put it into the chat. Taxidermy. No, you can keep that one for yourself. A handy motor car, the wonders of a jackknife. So it's got all these sorts of ideas in it. There's somewhere in there's a thing for making a particular type of, it's like a little tabletop water fountain where the pressure in part of it causes it to keep flowing for a lot longer than you expect to do because it keeps refreshing itself. Things like that. But I remember being quite intrigued by it when I was growing up, the book. Anyway, I wonder if that one's one of the ones available. It's probably an English one, knowing my family. I wonder if that's the sort of thing that would also be available on Project Gutenberg. That can be looked up. Try. Licorice. Keeping me going. Coffee. Right. So we've had the bit about taking the hat gadget off. He had fixed a fire escape to the landing window and nearly killed the trusting parlour-maid by letting her down in a blanket, just for practice. While the cook was soaked through in a sudden application of the hose pipe to quench imaginary flames in the region of the back kitchen. Oh dear, so very obviously not everything's working as well as he invents the intention in his mind. But I think the crowning achievement was an automatic currying brush, which was to be wound up and fixed onto the horse's back, and was to do the work in just half the time that old Fleming takes pottering over it. A curry brush is a grooming brush for horses, and it helps to keep their skin and their hair healthy and stop them getting too itchy. and a whole lot of things like that. You've got curry combs and brushes and all sorts of things to do with horses. Don't ye know, Master Archie, don't ye know, remonstrated the poor old coachman with dismay in his soul. Horses is kittle cattle, and it ain't right to play no tricks with 'em. Don't you be alarmed, Fleming. I guess Captain will like it just first rate. He'll find it sort of soothing, and it'll put such a gloss on him you'll be able to see your face in his coat. If it works all right, I'll rig up an arrangement to milk the cows next. We did that in New Zealand, and we've exported the technology around the world, and we're still developing it. And it's one of the most effective and safest and happiest for the cows, as in they're happy with it being used, milking machine systems, or an inventory type of people over here. And the confident inventor wound up his little machine and started it on Captain's fat back. But the old horse would have nothing to say to such a newfangled contrivance, and with a snort of alarm he had nearly kicked through the side of his stall, sending the currying brush flying in one direction and Master Archie head over heels in another. To be expected. I reckon he's rather too old to catch on to it, said the boy, determined not to own himself beaten, as he picked up the ruins of his clockwork. It would be best to start on a colt and put it in as part of the training. Well, yes, actually, that's probably true. Most animals, if you start with them young, you can get them used to all sorts of things. And I would say that the sound of the clockwork motor used to drive this is, for a start, not going to be something that a horse would be too keen on, especially an older one. Never mind, I can use the wheels to make an alarm and fix it up in the harness room to go off any time you like, Fleming. But Fleming showed such a rooted distrust of anything that was intended to go off, and indeed such absolute abhorrence of any further mechanical contrivance in the vicinity of the stables, that Archie had transferred his attentions to the garden, which is probably why we have the water wheel, where he was full of a scheme for utilising the water power of the little stream to irrigate the soil after the fashion of the Nile in Egypt, in a series of canals between the beds, and had already made the hose pipe work with capital effect by means of a siphon and an old barrel. This was a form of amusement which appealed far more to Miss Forster's mind, for her flowers suffered much from drought in summertime, and she was a keen competitor at the local horticultural shows, exhibiting some of the largest carnations and the roundest dahlias in the neighbourhood. So she watched with delight the growth of the hydraulic pump, groaning a little over the dirty boots and muddied clothes that ensued, but assuring her friends that the dear boy was a perfect genius and would make his mark in the world, and relating the story of his achievements with most unbound pride and satisfaction. And that's the end of that chapter, and it's an opportunity for me to clean the licorice out of my teeth at the back. It's distracting me, sorry. Right, that's a bit better. I think I should finish my coffee though. And I'll try not to pour it all over myself like I did last time. Anyone here remember that? Right. It is now nearly 4:30, and it's a slightly shorter chapter, so that's good. We can carry on. We are reading A Terrible Tomboy by Angela Brazel, and I'm Jev, and I read old children's books. That's what we're doing today. Chapter 12, In the Rectory Garden. A good man's life is like a fairest flower. It casts a fragrant breath on all around. Though Miss Forster's pet flower beds were a subject for modest congratulation to their owner, they were not to be compared to those at the Rectory, which were indeed a feast of scent and colour. The Rectory was worthily proud of the rector was worthily proud of his garden. Do you know what a rector is? It's a very English term. Let's see if it gets it right. Rector, in the Anglican Church, a cleric in charge of a parish and who owns the tithes of it. Not owns as in it's his personal income necessarily, but he's the church representative who takes charge of them. and they are distributed for his own salary, but also for the care of people within the community, for working on the church building and stuff. So a rectory is the place where a rector lives. Does that make sense? Yes, rectory, the residence of Roman Catholic priests associated with the parish church, also of Anglican priests. I don't know why it says Roman Catholic, but it's generally Roman Catholic and Anglican. Very English, and also some European use that term. So it's the house that is associated with where the person in charge of that parish lives. And it is part of the job as you get the house, the use of the house. It's got your office and everything else in it. So we shall carry on reading. In the rectory garden, the rector was worthily proud of his garden. It represented a considerable amount of skill and artistic taste on the part of himself and his handyman, for the rare plants and exquisite groupings of contrasting blossoms would have done credit to a more imposing establishment. And he had as choice a collection of shrubs, as good a collection of shrubs, as could be grown anywhere in the county. It was almost sunset when Peggy, having seen the last of Archie's contrivances and bidden good-bye to kind Miss Forster, passed by the rectory hedge, and hearing the brisk sound of the mowing machine, thank you for following, Colorado, and the brisk sound of the mowing machine, pushed open the little gate and went in, knowing she was always sure of a welcome. There you go. So she's off to visit some more people. Sorry, just a little bit of... It's cool. Heard the sound of the mowing machine. That will be a push mower where you push it and it's got blades that go round in a sort of cylindrical pattern, but the blades are usually curved around and it goes and it cuts off the grass. Because it's got this blade that comes past on the edge and it brushes up against a bar, and so it snips it off. There you go. That's a mowing machine, a push mower. Trying to find where I was. Hearing the brisk sound of the mowing machine, pushed open the little gate and went in, knowing she was always sure of a welcome. Peggy loved to get Mr. Howell sometimes quite to herself. Perhaps it was because he was one of those rare characters in whose presence we can feel certain of perfect sympathy, or perhaps it grew from a more subtle and silent bond, felt keenly by the child though never spoken of, for Peggy could remember a time when the rector's hair was raven black, and there had been a little Raymond Howell playing about on the smooth lawns of the old garden. Folks had said that the rector, like many a man who marries late in life, had made an idol of his motherless boy, and they had said again that his father's heart was broken and the print of death was on his face as he stood by his child's open grave. But they judged wrong, for he had wrestled with his sorrow like Jacob with the angel of old, and came forth from the struggle with his hair indeed as white as snow, but a face so full of the glory of his conquest that those who looked felt as if he too had died and they saw his immortality. That's an interesting way to phrase that, but also with a lot of, it sounds like a lot of fondness and respect. Intriguing. Sorry. Back to where I was. He's a changed man, said Ellen the nurse to Susan the cook as they talked in whispers over the night nursery fire when the children were in bed. If he was a saint before, it's an angel he is now, nothing less. They say he takes no thought for himself at all. His heart's been left in the grave with the poor boy. It's true, but mark my words, if there's a soul in trouble in all the parish, it's no kinder friend that they'll find than Mr. Howell. Little 5-year-old Peggy, lying wide awake, straining her ears to overhear the whispered conversation, sat up in bed with burning cheeks. So this is when she was younger. This is how she had got to know him, I would think. "Oh, nurse," she cried, Poor Mr. Howell, have they lost his heart in the churchyard and can't anybody find it for him? That's a 5-year-old's thinking, taking everything literally. Go to sleep at once, you naughty girl, or I'll call your aunt, said Ellen, putting out the candle to avoid further complications, for she knew she ought not to have been talking within hearing of her charges, and hoped Peggy would forget the matter by morning. But the child lay awake for a long time, puzzling her small brain. She was not quite sure what a heart was, but she thought the rector would miss it, and that he was in some sort of trouble she realised well enough. Can people live without hearts? She asked Lillian the next day. Of course not, cried Lillian. So Lillian's her older sister, remember? With superior wisdom of 9 years old. So there's a few years between them. And dismissed the idea with scorn, but Peggy did not consider the question ended by any means. Like most children, with the instinctive dread of being laughed at, she never thought of confiding her difficulty to an older person, but solved the problem according to her own quaint ideas. But solving the problem according to her own quaint ideas, she dodged the vigilance of Ellen and trotted off alone to the churchyard. She's 5. The lich gate was locked. Lich gate. There's a phrase for you. I don't know if it's a common one in North America. Lich gate. Do you know what that is? I do. Lich gate, a churchyard gateway with a roof under which a corpse was laid during a funeral to await the arrival of the clergyman. So in the old days, at the boundary of a churchyard where the gate was, there would be a roof, and the gate was set inside that space, and it meant that people could stand under the roof and be out of the rain. And the original purpose of it was so that if there was going to be a funeral, the body in its coffin could be stood or rested underneath that roof before it was taken into the church for the funeral service. And often they used to be left there for a certain amount of time, probably so passers-by could pay their respects, I would imagine. Anyway, but a lich gate now is actually just that space with the roof over it. They're often quite ornamental, quite pretty. Anyway, we do have a few older churches in New Zealand that have a similar sort of a gateway, probably never been used as a lich gate for the context that we had in the definition up here, but that's what the original is based off, this idea. Very old English sort of thing. So we'll find out where we were. The lich gate was locked, but she toiled over the steep steps that spanned the wall, and wading through the long grass under the yew trees, found the spot all covered with flowers, which Lillian had pointed out on Sunday, where Mary, the wife of the Reverend Philip Howell, that's the quote from the stone, slept, in sure and certain hope of the resurrection to eternal life. Continuing the quote, and where the stonemason had been already busy with his newly added line, also Raymond, only son of the above. There you go. So it's not uncommon in parts of England where you have a stone wall around a churchyard, if you have a gateway that is possibly going to have the gate locked to stop sheep and stuff getting in, because they're not necessarily latched that well, to actually have some steps that go up and over and into the churchyard so that people could still go in if they wanted to. But it was not necessarily going to be passable for animals. So therefore that ground inside the churchyard does not get sheep wandering around in it unless they're deliberately let in to eat the grass to cut it down, if you don't have someone who is going to mow it. Silly animals getting in the way, absolutely, that's it. But yes, it's not too uncommon in certain places to actually have some alternate way of getting into the churchyard that prevents animals being able to get in. So that was why. And I'll find out where we got up to, because for some reason I turned back a page. Who can tell all that goes on in the mind of a little child, or what it understands of death? In a vague way, Peggy knew that her playfellow had gone to heaven where Mother is, because Peggy's mother was dead as well. But she did not think of that as any cause for sorrow, nor did she connect him for an instant with the place where she stood, but With her nurse's words still troubling her, she knelt down and searched among the white flowers that hid the bare earth beneath. She's looking for the rector's lost heart. A step on the gravel walk startled her to her feet, but it was only the rector coming slowly down the path from the church door. "Don't go away, little Margaret," he said quietly. "God's acre is free to all." And that's a name. The churchyard used to be referred to as God's acre. It was land that was set aside and deemed sacred. And there were a lot of aspects of that sacredness which have come down through history, especially in England, such as being able to take refuge in a church when you were pursued by the law. You could stay inside the church, and they were not allowed to come in and remove you and take you away to the courts or anything like that, because you had sanctuary in the church. Now, originally it was the land around it as well, but later on it became so it was just the church itself, especially if you're up the front and holding onto the altar, the like table thing up the front of the church. But God's acre also was the area that was set aside for burying people in. You couldn't just bury them anywhere. It had to be somewhere where prayers had been said over the land and all that sort of stuff, so it was safe and sacred and things like this. Just the way it was. See, we do learn things about other times and places when we read kids' books. A step on the gravel walk startled her to her feet, but it was only the rector coming slowly down the path from the church door. "Don't go away, little Margaret," he said quietly. "God's acre is free to all. We have both precious seed sown here that we hope to find blooming some day in paradise." All those flowery euphemisms that children don't really get. They often misunderstand them. We'll see what happens with this lot. "Oh, Mr. Howell," burst out Peggy. Not Beggy pursed out. Peggy burst out, her grey eyes brimming over with tears. "Is it really true that your heart is lost here? Don't you think if we were both to look, we might find it again?" Lovely. The rector stroked the brown curls with a tender hand. "Where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. No, child, it's not here, but up in the light beyond." And he pointed where the sun, breaking through the clouds, burst out in a flood of golden glory. He's meaning heaven, but she's probably thinking the sky. "We make our plans for this world," he said softly, speaking as much to himself as to Peggy, "and say we will do this or that, but sometimes God takes it out of our hands and arranges it for us. But his ways are better than our ways, and his thoughts than our thoughts, and after all, death is but the gate to life immortal." Natural sort of speaking for a man who is a man of the cloth. Since then, a great friendship had existed between these two, made all the stronger perhaps by the 50 years that divided them, for old folk have often more tolerance and sympathy for childhood than have those whose eyes are still blinded by the bustle of life, and whatever Peggy might be to others, with Mr. Howell she was always at her highest and best. "As welcome as the flowers in May, my dear child," said the rector this evening. So we've had a little bit of history for the two of them. Now we're back to the present. "I was just longing for an excuse to leave the lawnmower, and now I feel bound to give up work and entertain you. Come and look at my carnations." And taking a basket as a receptacle for any weeds that might offend his eye, he led the way. Peggy trotting after him with her little tongue wagging freely in a lively account of her latest adventures, and the marvels which her new friend Archie was constructing in Miss Forster's garden. "Yes, he's a clever lad," said Mr. Howell, "and likely to do well and be a comfort to her, I hope. It's a grand thing when a boy can fill his life with a hobby. It leaves him no time to get into mischief." "I think flowers are your hobby, next to the parish," said Peggy, as she watched the rector tying up his carnations, touching each blossom as carefully as if it were a child, with a tender pride in its loveliness. "Flowers are such dear friends, you see, Peggy. They rarely disappoint or deceive you. Treat them well, and they repay you 1,000-fold, and the best of it is they give so much pleasure to others as well as to ourselves. By the by, how are Miss Forster's carnations getting on?" They probably compete at the local flower show. Beautifully. She has a lovely apricot-coloured one she hopes may take a prize, but I don't like it as well as your yellow. She says the show will be bigger than ever this year. So many of the village people have sent in entries. I'm glad of that, said the rector. Gardening is the best hobby a working man can take up. Thank you, Colorado. I appreciate that. Love your voice, they say. Hosted you. Hope that's okay. Absolutely, that's wonderful. Thank you for hosting me. I will be continuing to the end of this chapter, which will probably take me to for the next quarter of an hour. And then after that, I'm sorry, that's it for today. But I'm all good with you hosting. I do appreciate it. Thank you. I'll carry on. Sorry, it's a delight to actually get to meet new friends here. I'm glad of that. Gardening is the best hobby a working man can take up. He won't want to think of that public house when he's digging in his patch of ground and watching the plants he's raised himself. I always agree with good old Francis Bacon that God Almighty first planted a garden, and indeed it is the purest form of human pleasures. I have given away a great many roots in the village this spring, roots to his different plants as cuttings. And thank you for the host. It's great. Really appreciated. In the hope that the flowers would find their way to the show in due course. So he's sharing, when you take the roots of certain plants, they will continue to grow when you take a portion of them away and plant them in another garden. So he's sharing of his own plants so other people can grow the same plants. I'll find where that was. It just makes a lot of sense. I've given away a great many roots in the village this spring in the hope that the flowers would find their way to the show in due course. People are generally so pleased with them. So he's sharing his enjoyment, not just as a flower, but as a plant, so people can continue to get pleasure from them. I took a nice carnation plant down to old Mrs. Johnson at the smithy, said Peggy, but she didn't seem at all pleased. She said I might have known she wanted a bazaar and not a Piccadilly, and I was bringing coals to Newcastle. But you left it for her all the same, said the rector. Oh, yes, I believe she liked it really, for it was quite a new kind, but she loves to grumble, and she's a terribly cross old woman. So bazaar and Piccadilly are varieties of flower that Peggy had taken one sort and the lady was like, oh yeah, thanks very much, I've got heaps of those. And hoping that she was going to get a different sort, but she would have still enjoyed it anyway. Some people can't express gratitude without making a complaint. And it actually becomes a life habit. It's not that good. Poor old soul. She's let her heart wither up instead of ripening. We must all do one or the other, Peggy, child, as we grow older. It is only the sunshine of God's presence that can mellow us thoroughly, and if people wilfully turn away from that, they are bound to become shriveled and sour. Worldly prosperity is like a strong electric light. It may bring out flowers, but it will never ripen character, so don't forget that, or ever exchange it for the true sunlight. Now come and help me choose out which flowers to specially train for the show, and we shall just have time to stake them before dark. Staking them is where you tie them up to a stick that's poked in the ground so the flower doesn't fall over and get broken. The rector never made the mistake of continually talking down to a child's level. He spoke with Peggy exactly as he would have done with a grown-up friend, and if she could not always follow his train of thought, I think the mere effort to do so was good for her. And the older she grew, the more truly she understood and appreciated him. It is not only when we try to amuse them that the children love us best. Who has not sometimes seen the look of almost contempt in the eyes of a little one for the good-natured elder who plays the fool for his benefit? And often the companion most cared for and sought after by a child is he who unconsciously raises the standard of the eager growing soul. That's an interesting point. Where you share with a child, where you talk with a child as more of an equal rather than someone less than you, especially if it's on a one-to-one basis, not when you've got a whole lot of them necessarily. Generally, they respond better than if you are talking down to explain to them as if you think that they're an idiot. People have BS detectors, even children, and when you talk down to someone, you are talking BS. And yes, I am using the term that way because we are a granny-friendly channel and some of them don't like the words that those represent. Right, let's carry on. For reasons of his own, the rector kept Peggy late that evening and they made a little tour of the garden, selecting what they called their prize plants, putting India rubber bands round carnation buds to keep them from bursting. By the way, India rubber bands are what we would just call a rubber band. It was kind of a new enough invention that it was referred to as India rubber because rubber trees grew in India. They collected the sap and then it was processed and turned into rubber, the stretchy material that we can use for things. But in the old days, it used to get referred to as India rubber. Just was. Anyway, putting India rubber bands around carnation buds to keep them from bursting, that means to stop them opening too soon, and tying up the most promising stocks and asters with a scrupulous care. More flowers. Remember we discovered that she often puts in different plants and flowers in this book. Obviously she had a garden herself or appreciated them. Working until the light had almost failed and the sky stood out yellow against the outline of the cypress trees. It grew so dim and still in the twilight that Peggy cried out in alarm as a tall figure seemed to rise from the shadows under the dark yew hedge and came towards them. But peering through the gathering dusk, she recognised the face of her old friend, Mr. Neville. "John," exclaimed the rector, "I thought you had been at the Abbey all this time." "I haven't found the courage yet," returned the other huskily. He was the chap who had been, was it playing games with the children? And there was some hint and some connection with Aunt Helen, but nothing had happened. Hopefully by the end of the story, not the chapter, but the end of the book, we'll have got that sorted out. "I haven't found the courage yet," returned the other huskily, picking a prize dahlia to pieces with a recklessness that seemed wanton in Peggy's eyes, pulling it apart. I think he's a little distracted. "Oh, Mr. Neville, is it really you? However did you get here?" she cried. "Mayn't I know the rector too, Peggy? He happens to be a very old friend of mine, and I have come to see him." "You said you knew father and Aunt Helen too, but you've never been to see us," said Peggy reproachfully. "I'm afraid there's only Aunt Helen in tonight, but I know she'd love you to come." "I'm not so sure about that," said Mr. Neville, rather bitterly. "I don't know whether I should be welcome, Peggy dear. Aunt Helen and I quarrelled once, long ago, and I doubt if she could forgive me." At least he's being honest about it now. It's more chance of progress if he's honest about it. "Oh, she would, I know she would," exclaimed Peggy. "She's always forgives us, however naughty we are, and she told me once, the night she was crying over the old letters in her writing desk." I don't think Peggy's meant to say anything about that. Oh, no. "She told me once, the night she was crying over the old letters in her writing desk, that if you quarrel with anyone, it was better to make it up at once and not let it go on forever. Do please try." "Oh, my boy," said the rector, "tell her the simple truth and don't spoil 2 lives for the sake of an old tale that is best forgotten." Good on you, rector. And there's a bit of a gap there. And in our family, when we come across that in a story, when we're reading it aloud, we just carry on reading and we say gap, and then we carry on with the next bit. And it's like a scene change in a play. Peggy waited wide awake in bed for hours that night to catch father's step in the passage and call him in for a good-night kiss. "Oh, Daddy," she cried as she clasped him round the neck, "is Aunt Helen really and truly going to marry Mr. Neville?" I didn't think it was going to happen this chapter that they'd get it sorted out. I thought it was going to be the end of the book. "Really and truly at last, dear, and I could not wish to see her in better hands. But whatever shall we do without her? We must manage as best we can, Peggy, and try not to spoil her happiness by any selfish regrets. I have had terrible trouble to persuade her to leave us at all, for she was ready to sacrifice herself bravely a second time, but that I would not allow. Aunt Helen has thought for us and worked for us all these years, and now we must learn to look after ourselves." You are getting big girls, and Lillian must be my little housekeeper and a mother to the rest of you, because she's 5 years older than Peggy, remember? Aunt Helen has taught you how to behave, so don't you think, little woman, it's time to begin to settle down and do your best to grow up what she and I would like you to be? I'll try, said Peggy, kissing him. We don't want to lose Aunt Helen, but oh, as she nestled down among the bedclothes, what a delightful uncle Mr. Neville will make. End of the chapter. And the next one is, guess what the chapter's called? The Smuggler's Cave. Total change of direction there, isn't it? That's cool. Oh, I'm so delighted that we don't have to wait till the end of the book to actually have a resolution to Aunt Helen's situation. Fabulous. Dun, dun, dun. Absolutely. I don't have the gravel in my voice. It makes me go all coughing. Anyway, so that's the end of the chapter. It's nearly 5 o'clock here in New Zealand. So what are those tasks that you have? This is today's homework. And it's not a test on the story. Today's homework is to remind me in my Discord server, our Discord server, of the different things that I need to get done. And thank you for putting the Codex link up there again, Goriki. So for those of you who are new here, I'm a reader with Codex, and so is Goriki. We have quite a few other readers as well. We all read on Twitch, and we read public domain books. Books that are no longer within copyright, or ones that we have been given express permission to be able to read. Most of the other readers don't just read books, they play games, they do just chatting and travel type streams and all sorts of different things. But it's a really great bunch of people. So the link that Goriki has put over in the chat is, there's two links there. There's one for our Twitch team, and we haven't yet got all of the the Codex Twitch readers to join the team yet. We're still waiting for some of them to finish doing their paperwork for that. Well, whatever you call it when it's on a computer. And also there's the link for our Discord server, which I did correct the other day to one that should work, which can one of you who have used it before please test it for me just in case I got it wrong. I didn't put a full stop after it, so that should mean that it works. But it should be a live link instead of an old link that's dead. So if you join the Codex Discord, it's not just for the readers. It's actually for anyone who's interested in old books and chatting about things like that and just getting together and stuff like that. We've got a book club get together coming up at the end of the month. So that's next weekend, isn't it, Goriki? So the weekend that's at the end of this week, it will be my Sunday. Most of you, it will be Saturday evening or during the day or something, or even the middle of the night. But for me, it's going to start midday New Zealand time on Sunday. So I've got to rush home and try and be there in time. Thank you, Q. That's great. Thank you for testing that. The Codex one works. So if you want to find out more about the Codex Book Club, please go and join the Discord server and look for the book club section to find out details. You'll have to agree to the appropriate behavior type rules that the Discord server has, just because, I mean, why not? Why wouldn't you? So you're not going to steal people's information, and you're not going to be rude, and you're not going to be nasty and all those sorts of things. That's basically what you're agreeing to, is just being a reasonable human being. So it shouldn't be any problem with that. But also within the Codex server is a whole section there that Goriki has written up, which is about security. So if you're a streamer, he gives you all sorts of tips and tricks and information about keeping your Twitch stream secure and safe. Like things like making sure that you don't get bots sitting in your chat, stealing people's information, spamming the chat, tricking people into clicking on links that they shouldn't click on, all of that sort of stuff. And he explains why you do these things. Okay, so if you are not a Twitch streamer, you may not think that that's important to you, but it's a good idea to have a look, because then you see what responsible people are doing to help look after you and the communities that you become part of. Not everybody who streams is very aware of this. There's a thread of thinking that people have, which is incorrect, where they think that if there is a bot in their chat, it adds to their viewer numbers, and so therefore Twitch is actually going to look more favourably on them. In actual fact, Twitch knows that they're bots, and so it doesn't count them. There's no point in having bots in your chat, sitting on your channel, or anything like that. And there's so many negative things, really seriously negative things, that bots and other things can do that are not good, are not safe. And so looking at the security section is a really good idea, because it helps you to understand what goes on in the background to keep various Twitch communities safe places for everyone to be. So one of the things that is specific to my Twitch channel is the fact that I refer to it as being either a G or a PG level of safe for people to be. I want it to be a safe place for grannies. Maybe we can put up a logo somewhere that's G for grannies. Grannies who are reminiscing about stuff that they had enjoyed when they were children, books that they had enjoyed when they were children, and maybe are not really quite so confident with the internet as being a particularly safe place. But if they can find somewhere that is a safe place where they don't have to worry about the language being used. I don't mind if you use bad language on your channel. I don't mind if you play particularly violent games on your channel. That's fine. But I would like them to have a place where they can actually still be online enjoying something without having to worry about what they're watching for them, because it's not what they're used to, but also if they've got their grandkids with them, that they can share something with them, which has a little bit more engagement than just sitting down in front of the TV or something like that. So that's why I refer to this channel as being a granny safe place. A G-rated channel, or maybe a PG-rated channel, probably PG, just because of the fact that some of the contexts of things in old stories, there are some things that come up in old stories that we don't accept as being okay now, but they were at the time that the books were written. I don't censor those. I think I've actually I think that's what we've got in the disclaimer. Yes. So there are some things, have a read through the disclaimer there. There are some things which are in old books that we don't agree with. I do not avoid those things. I will still read them out, except for one or two words. There are one or two words that I specifically will avoid just because of the extremity of those things. But I've also got tools in place to make sure that language that is used in the chat is safe for having around kids and grannies and stuff like that. So there's a lot of rules I have in place which are just to look after the well-being of the community that we've got here. And I'd like to be able to extend that so other people can feel that they can come in and be part of it. They can be as sweary as they like in their own streams, but here we are respectful of the potential to have grannies and grandkids in on the chat. So maybe I should do a logo for G or PG even. Maybe PG represents poppers and grannies, you know, because poppers can be a little bit more into a little bit more strong stuff. I don't know. That's a possibility. Maybe we should do some more emotes. What do you think? Come and join my Discord server, get into some conversation with us, talk about some suggestions that you might have or ideas or things that you think are funny. Talk about books that you remember from when you were growing up that you really enjoyed, or TV series that you know may have been based on books. Sometimes it's not so much that a TV series is based on a book, it's a certain feel that it has that you really enjoy. You can remember it really strongly. Come and find something like that to talk about with us. And if you ever find that any of the things that I'm reading about remind you of stuff, and you see things online that connect with that, pictures or places on maps or anything like that, come and talk about those over there too. If you find any illustrations or pictures of stuff specific to a book, as long as they're not tightly held in copyright or anything like that, feel free to share them in that particular book that I'm reading's channel within our Discord server. And if I haven't yet got a channel for the current book or another one that you want to talk about that you know I've read before, in the general chat, ask me to start up a channel for it, and then you'll be able to share whatever it is that you want to in there. And there are similar rules over on Discord as what I've got here in Twitch for language use and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, so there you go. All of that sort of wonderful thing. And I hope you have a fantastic time for the rest of the week, because today is, I'm looking at my other monitor, Monday. It is Monday. Yay. So you've got a whole week ahead of you. What are we going to do next? Oh, goodness me. Maybe we can go and raid somebody. What do you think about that? Should we go and see if we can find somebody to raid? Oh, that's a thought. Maybe I should have a look on my Discord and find out who's currently active over on Twitch that I know of. We'll go and see. We'll go and have a look and see if there's anyone that might be appropriate for us to go and raid. Yes, we're going to go and raid Lyrical Leia, who does music. And she's got about 10 people watching at the moment. So if you are interested, you can please do stick with us and say hi when you get there and say that we've been listening to old books. And, oh, unable to raid her at the moment. I don't know why. That's strange. It would be great to raid her. I'm not quite sure why, but we'll give that another try. Otherwise, just go over and visit her if we can't actually. No, her channel may be set to not accepting raids because I haven't actually followed her before. Maybe that's why. I know what I'll do. No. What I'll do is I haven't followed her. So I'm just telling Goreki. I'm going to follow her, and then I may be able to, because usually if someone's got rules in place for raids, it's about whether or not someone is unknown. And so if I follow her first, it may actually allow me to. So we'll see how it goes. See if this is going to let it work. Otherwise, yes, go Ricky, if it'll let you. No, still not letting me. That's okay. So go over to her channel. I'm going to give you a link for it. So it is... Go and see her anyway, regardless of whether or not I can raid her. Here's her link. I've put it in the chat. Go and click on that and go and see her after I've said goodbye. So thank you very much for being here. Great to have you here. Look forward to seeing you next time. And thank you for the follows and the everything. Oh, okay. We're going to give it a try. Cool. Sorry. Sorry. Go Ricky's just giving me information about it. Ah, it's because I've now got the full length in there and it wasn't letting me. Good day, good night. Yeah, no, it's still not letting me. You're going to have to use it yourself. Just have to click on that link that I've given you. Anyway, so thank you very much for being here. Great to have you here. Look forward to seeing you next time. And thank you also for that purchasing something through my... It probably takes a bit of time for it to go through. Don't worry about it, Go Ricky. We'll get it sorted out for another time because I'll add her to my list of people that I can raid when I know she's on. And in the meantime, happy reading. Bye.